To me, Crash Team Racing was like heroin. It was fun, exciting, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I could not bring myself to put the game down. I bled Crash Team Racing dry of content. I 101% completed the story mode with all trophies, tokens, gems, and platinum relics. I even went through and beat all of Entropy's and Oxide's time trial ghosts for every track in the game, and I still wanted more. It got to the point where I apparently had to have an intervention. They said that my addiction was damaging not only to myself, but also to my loved ones. It was causing me to physically deteriorate. It was becoming a financial burden, and I was throwing my life away. Pfft, what do they know? I wasn't addicted, I could have quit whenever I wanted. But to stop their incessant whining and complaining, I stopped and moved on to other games. But to be honest, sometimes the craving comes back. I'm not addicted, but I still have the urge to play. I'm sober now, I've sworn off Crash Team Racing, but that doesn't mean I can't experience any more Bandicoot racing action. Because there's another one, Crash Nitro Kart. Based on what I've heard through the grapevine, Crash Nitro Kart isn't anywhere near as good as CTR, some even call it a failure. But at this point, I'll take what I can get. Let's see if Crash Nitro Kart can scratch this itch and give me that sweet racing high. In a lot of ways, Crash Nitro Kart is a carbon copy of Crash Team Racing. We're talking a selection of racetracks, we're talking a selection of races, we're talking adventure mode, single player, multiplayer, time trials, battle mode. It's all here. It truly is the same game. Great, we can all go home now. Just kidding. The skeleton may be the same, but the mushy, bloody, fleshy goodness surrounding it is noticeably different, so let's focus on that. Starting with the aforementioned adventure mode. In Crash Team Racing, the plot of the adventure mode was stupid. I know it's just a silly kart racer and that it doesn't actually matter, but I'm an adult, goddammit! I'm allowed to have opinions. The whole reason we went through an entire tournament process was because Nitrous Oxide, a racer from Gasmoxia, wanted to turn Earth into an enormous car park. I don't know why the car park needed to be exactly in Earth's location. There's plenty of space in space, after all. But Oxide targeted Earth anyway. It was ridiculous. Even though the stakes were technically high, the threat was low. That doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. It didn't feel like a worthy cause. Crash Nitro Kart makes a bit more of an effort, and I appreciate that. Rather than having aliens come to us, we are taken to them. Emperor Velo the 27th kidnaps Bandicoots Crash, Coco and Crunch, as well as Cortex, Engine and Tiny, and challenges them to race against his 4 champions to save Earth from certain destruction. Also racing on Velo's behalf, for some reason, are Entrance, a hypnotized Dingodile and Pura, Oxide, who seems to have suffered a huge demotion in this game, and also Zem and Zam, 2 unholy space goblins who really don't deserve the gift of life. It is up to our heroes and villains to collect all the trophies by winning races on various planets, beat each planet's champion, and stop Emperor Velo. We can't have him destroying our planet, that's humanity's job. In terms of structure, Nitro Kart's adventure mode is very similar to that of Crash Team Racing. Win races to earn trophies, beat bosses to earn keys, rinse and repeat for each hub world. If you played CTR, you know the drill. But there are some key differences here. Firstly, rather than each hub world having 4 racetracks, Nitro Kart only has 3, which is a bummer. But the big difference is that rather than locking yourself to a single playable character, you get to choose a single playable team, either Team Bandicoot or Team Cortex. Each team consists of 3 races, each with a different driving style. This is actually a great change, because it means you can change which driving style you want for a particular track. That's incredibly useful. Although, to be honest, I didn't really make use of it, at all. I played as Team Bandicoot, naturally. I was going to play as Crash for the whole game, since his name and his likeness are on the title screen, main menu, and the cover of the box. But all it took was a flash of his baby blues, and a flash of his everything else, for me to succumb to picking Crunch instead. What can I say? I like my Bandicoots big, buff, and beautiful. Anyway, even though I didn't make use of the opportunity to switch between races in your chosen team, I acknowledge and appreciate the fact that it's there. It's a great change from the original CTR. But the biggest selling point of a kart racer is the kart racing itself. It needs to be good for the game to be good. It seems fairly obvious, but you'd be surprised at just how thick some people's skulls are. I once heard someone ask if green apples were healthier than red apples because green means good and red means evil. Ever since then, I felt like I really need to spell things out for people. The kart racing was what made CTR such a gem. Nitro Kart has enormous boots to fill. Does it live up to the expectation? Well, Nitro Kart's gameplay is very similar to CTR. It follows standard kart racer rules. You're on the track racing against 7 other racers. You need to try and complete the laps of the track and cross the finish line before all the other racers. You can break open crates to pick up items such as mines or rockets that will assist you in your efforts to leave your opponents sucking the gas out of your exhaust pipe. Oi, mind out the gutter, mate. When boiled down to its essentials, Nitro Kart is just like any other kart racer. What set CTR apart from its kart racing cousins was its drift boost mechanic. The tight and satisfying feel of drifting and boosting made zooming through each track incredibly fun. And Nitro Kart sees a variation of that drift mechanic return. It's floatier and not quite as tight, but it maintains the essence of CTR's drifting. In fact, it even expands on it in a way, encouraging you to build a chain of boosts, which in its own way was very satisfying. The biggest chain I managed to get was 50, and the rush I felt when I hit that number was incredible. It may not feel as good to play as CTR, but that doesn't mean it doesn't feel good. It feels good in its own way. There are also a couple of other mechanics at play that sets Nitro Kart apart from CTR. I mentioned before that the cast is split into teams, but there's more to it than just a title. It actually plays a role in the gameplay. There are, as far as I can work out, 4 teams. Team Bandicoot consists of Crash, Coco, and my future husband. Team Cortex consists of Cortex, Engine, and Tiny. Then you have Team Trance, consisting of Entrance, Dingadal, and Pura. And finally, Team Oxide, consisting of Oxide, Zem, and Zam. In each race, 2 members of each team take part. If you and your teammate are next to each other in the race, your team's meter will charge up, and once it's full, you can unleash a frenzy of items until the power wears off. This is kinda cool. It's situational and hard to do deliberately, you're better off actually just trying to win, but it's a fun, incidental thing that makes you feel unstoppable. Another funny thing I learned about the team mechanic is that, in adventure mode at least, your teammate can win the race on your behalf. I remember racing in Barren Ruins, and I attempted that shortcut right before the finish line, but botched it up. I managed to scrape back to 2nd place, but Coco won the race instead of me. Despite that though, I still earned the trophy for that race. Kinda weird, but I guess it makes sense, you are on the same team after all. Anyway, even though Nitro Kart borrows a lot from CTR's gameplay, it throws in some original ideas that help it stand out and offer a more unique kart racing experience. Another pretty important component of the kart racer genre is the tracks themselves. Having fun controls is all well and good, but if you can only use them on boring, shitty, fuck-ass tracks, you may as well not play at all. Thankfully, Nitro Kart boasts a wide range of interesting and unique racetracks, such as not Crash Cove, not Blizzard Bluff, not Tiger Temple, not Cortex Castle, and not Ruse Tubes. Just kidding, while some tracks have clearly taken heavy inspiration from tracks in CTR, a lot of Nitro Kart's tracks are very original and have some excellent design. They feature plenty of twists and turns, some satisfying corners, some rewarding shortcuts, and even include elements that never appeared in CTR. Things like anti-gravity and exclamation mark crates manipulating hazards make it so that tracks flow and change in ways you'd never expect, and it makes for some pretty memorable races. Driving up and around the clock face in Out of Time, and the giant jump at the start of Electron Avenue were particular highlights for me. The blatant rip-off tracks are kind of disappointing, but when the tracks decide to do their own thing and be original, they really are excellent. That all being said, the game is incredibly easy. The only way you can actually lose a race is if you royally fuck up a shortcut, and even then, your teammate might just win the race for you anyway. Like CTR, Nitro Kart also features boss races against each Hub World's champion. They are Crunk, who the fuck is that? Nash, who the fuck is that? Norm, who the fuck are they? And Geary, who the fuck is that? I will say they are a bit more interesting than CTR's boss races. CTR's boss races are just one-on-ones against someone who could spam an unlimited number of particular items, whereas Nitro Kart has some boss races where it's you against the boss and their assistants, so you're blatantly outnumbered. Even still though, the bosses, and by extension the game, is extremely easy. You have to try to lose. Which is what I thought until I reached the final boss. Holy fuck. I was not ready to get railed by this race. Emperor Velo the 27th made me his bitch on Hyper Spaceway. I had to restart quite a few times. But I gotta say, Hyper Spaceway is probably the peak of this game. Admittedly, the lack of challenge in this game was starting to bore me slightly, so I was glad to be blown away by this race. Velo and his minions make clever use of items, blocking off certain ramps and lines with mines, and they're pretty fast. But the track itself? What a glorious masterpiece of track design. The portals, the leaps, the shortcuts, the use of anti-gravity, the length, it was on a completely different level and I loved it. This is the racing high I was looking for. And what a spectacle, the way it looked and sounded was brilliant, which is consistent for the whole game. Some locations look a bit generic, but a lot of it was very unique and memorable, and the soundtrack was great, especially the main theme. It does look a bit off in places, some character models could use a bit of work, but who am I to body shame? I look like a stick of bamboo. Overall, the game is presented very well. If you want to actually save Earth, you need to go and collect all the relics and stuff and challenge Velo a second time. In the original CTR, I was more than happy to do that. But here in Nitro Kart, even though I had just had a thrilling few laps around Hyper Spaceway, I wasn't really feeling it. I tried a few of the other modes out, I did a relic race, they work exactly the same as they did in CTR. I did a CNK challenge, they work exactly the same as they did in CTR. I did a crystal challenge, they work exactly the same as they did in CTR. The only difference is that it's Nitro Kart's controls, mechanics and tracks. To be honest, I wasn't that keen to do them all. I did one of each just to experience it, but I left it there. And I think that really says it all. While I had a lot of fun with Nitro Kart and I think it has a lot of merit, I think it pales in comparison to CTR. The gameplay was very fun, the mechanics were solid, the tracks were well designed, the game was well presented, it has a lot going for it. But aside from the story, CTR simply did it better. CTR's gameplay was more fun, the mechanics were more solid, the tracks were better designed, and as a result, I became way more addicted to CTR than I did Nitro Kart. And even though Nitro Kart was well presented and had a great story, I felt a little bit of detachment. Because the game takes place on these other planets with a cast of characters that includes more new additions than returning favourites. I personally felt that Nitro Kart was a bit further removed from the series, and that slightly rubbed me the wrong way. So to summarise, I don't think Crash Nitro Kart is a failure. It is a very enjoyable game, and I had a lot of fun with it. It has a lot going for it, and I think a lot of its best qualities go unappreciated. But I think that's just because it's stuck in the shadow of Crash Team Racing, a kart racer that does nearly everything right. It was a very tough act to follow, and honestly, I didn't believe for a moment that Nitro Kart would be able to surpass it. But you know what? It put up a damn good fight, and that's to be commended. CTR's clear superiority doesn't make Nitro Kart any less of a game worth playing, and while it may be rougher in some areas, it's in no way a bad game at all. It's really good. It's just that CTR is better. God, all this talk of CTR really makes me want to go back. But I can't. I'm sober now. I can't risk getting addicted again. Oh, what the hell. Just one race.